It's expected the reconfiguration of the Mass Turnpike in Allston will open new opportunities for housing and economic growth. For people in the surrounding neighborhoods, the benefits will depend above all on plans for a new transportation hub. At the end of last year, the timetable for those plans was pushed back, prompting some new pressure in the opposite direction from local residents and an institutional neighbor. Tonight we'll talk about those developments with an Allston resident and People's Pike organizer, Harry Mattison. Thank you very much for being with us, Harry.
Thank you, Chris.
For people who are not familiar with it, talk about what you live with every day in Allston in those approaches to the Pike. I mean, there's just tons of vehicles every day, at least every weekday.
Sure. Well, I wake up every morning at 5 or 5:30 hearing the trucks from the Mass Pike, roaring down the highway. And then if you're, whether you're driving or biking or however you're trying to get to work in the morning, you're sitting in just an enormous amount of traffic. The Mass Pike in Allston backs up every day both ways for miles. The buses are overcrowded. You try and cross the river by bike, you're taking your life in your own hands. And if you try and do it in a car, you're sitting in a ton of traffic.
And, day-to-day life in Allston means if you're going from one part of Allston to another, you've got to get across some of that traffic. It's not always safe to do that, and I guess that's one of the things that complicates what goes on with the plans here, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why what MassDOT really needs to do is have this be much more than a highway project. We need better bus service, better train service, better, safer streets for biking, and that's a real urgent need. It's a need not just for people who live in Allston, but for the surrounding towns, people, Cambridge and Brookline, other Boston neighborhoods, Watertown, they're all driving through, Allston and getting stuck every day.
Well, because one of the reasons Harvard wants to put up a lot of money for a transportation hub, and maybe BU, is that they want some economic growth. And right now, you've got a lot of economic activity that's drawing all that traffic. So how does this new station make that situation better?
So this new station, which is called West Station, it can unlock a huge amount of value both for the land Harvard owns, for other abutters like BU, and then also regionally, because West Station is it's an east-west connection on the Worcester line. So for folks who are trying to commute from Newton and Framingham, Natick, and Worcester, both into this city, but also cross the river and to get into Cambridge, right? If you're commuting from Wellesley to Kendall Square right now, you have no choice but to sit in just, probably at least an hour of traffic each way.
Now, explain the advantage of having that stop in addition to a stop that is already being used near New Balance and Brighton. It doesn't seem like a long distance, but what's the difference?
So there's a fundamental difference in what West Station can do, which is, as I said, it can connect over the Grand Junction, which is the bridge that goes under the BU bridge, the one covered with all the graffiti that everyone recognizes. From the Allston West Station, there can be passenger service over the Grand Junction to Central Square and Kendall Square to North Station, and the track's already there. Governor Patrick announced it 5 years ago, and now it's a question of if Governor Baker is going to fulfill that promise.
Well, talk about the timetable here, because the state has two issues. One of them at first was that, well, we need to know more about Harvard's plans. Harvard's put in all this money. And then the state says, well, we can't do anything right away because we might have to store some trains on some of that land. So, I mean, is there a way you can really push up the timetable that much?
Well, first of all, we should be running more train service, not parking trains in a sort of train parking lot every day. And no, of course, no one can tell the future. And, I don't know what I'm doing in 5 years. No one knows what Harvard's doing in 20 years. Those are really pretty ridiculous excuses. What we know is that when we build new transit in the urban core of the city, that will encourage the right kind of development. That will be good for the environment. That will help create new jobs and new housing, and it will create options that people just don't have today when you look at where people live and where people work.
When you say the right kind, how would that be different from other kinds?
Well, the right kind of development is development where you can walk or bike or take the bus or train to work. And that's certainly what everyone's trying to encourage right now. And building West Station as soon as possible will encourage that kind of development in the 100 acres around it.
You recently got together with some people in Allston in a kind of a rally to get things moving a little more quickly. Talk about that.
Sure. So we had a few dozen folks standing outside in 18-degree weather at the Cambridge Street, River Street Bridge intersection right near the Doubletree Hotel. People probably know it from sitting in the traffic, from their nightmares about it. You know, that's where you try and get off the Mass Pike, and you can spend half an hour just sitting on an off-ramp trying to get from the highway into the neighborhood. And so, I think the more people who understand the value of West Station and of better, bus, bike, train, and walking options, the more support it has.
Of course, another potential here with this open space is the access to the Charles River. There is a narrow strip along the river. You can ride your bike there, but getting to there from the neighborhood might be a bit tricky now. So how could that get better?
So the Charles River is an absolutely essential link in this. We want, more people to be able to bike along the river to get from, all of these surrounding neighborhoods in Boston, Cambridge, Watertown, and beyond, and to have a great bike ride into the city. Today, what you have is you have this cramped, narrow path right alongside the highway, and there's a lot of support for having a much wider path, whether that's on a boardwalk, whether that is done by filling in the river a small amount. If we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on new highways, we should also be able to spend some money to create a great place for people to walk and bike as well.
Of course, the other issue in the planning here is that you can't wait until 2040 because there are things happening now. If it isn't, Amazon.com, it's going to be somebody else that's going to be looking for room to, have workspaces, have housing. So I guess this is one of the few big areas with a lot of land for that.
Oh yeah, I mean, this region only has a few really big places left where you can build. There's Suffolk Downs, there's the Cambridge Crossing site, and Allston is absolutely in that list of a few small places, or a few large places. The question is, what kind of growth does the governor want? Does the governor want more traffic, more greenhouse gas emissions, more gridlock, or do we want to try to move in a more constructive direction?
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Harry Mattison, People's Pike advocate.